One of the things I'd like to do in this session, and we've done, I think the last time Steve taped for us, we had several hours of video, and those have gone all over the world, and lots of study groups have used those and gone through it. And so what we're doing now is adding to that, but also, since you're familiar with the material, I want to find out how it's worked out in your lives. What have you done with it? And how did this really work out, the information that you got? And so I'll be stopping along the way as we move on into the next section to ask you, how did this really work out in your life? And for you to give us real life examples of that. And so it'll be pretty much what we've been doing, but I just wanted to give you the heads up on that, to be thinking about that. And it's not pressure. If you don't want to say anything, you don't have to say anything. But as we sit and look at the world, and we're developing more and more a philosophy of suffering, which ultimately is going to be a philosophy of comfort. Because the world will say this to you, that as suffering goes up, life quality goes down. But Jesus said that as suffering goes up, life goes up. And so there's something that we find in that we can't find anywhere else. And then we've said that there's a purpose for your life on the earth. You didn't just show up here, but that He actually brought you here and had you begin your life here. And so there's a reason for life on earth. And when we're working with people, we want to address that issue with them. And so here's what we've said in the past, and this is what I want to ask you, and we want to have that on video today. So we've said this, that in God's mind, one day, He decided that He would make man. And He decided that He would make angels. So in God's mind, He made angels one day. The angels instantly appeared before Him. Now, there was a problem in that some of those angels looked at themselves and they said, "We have glory." Did they have glory? Whose glory was it? It was God's glory, and they stole His glory. And Isaiah 42 says He won't give His glory to another, and that includes angels. And so heaven became hell, and there was a great battle there. I really did like this African telling about seeing the battle in heaven, that he saw this battle between Satan and the angels. And it was really good the way he described it. He just said that there were Satan with the legion behind him, angels. There was the archangel Michael with this legion, and they came running toward each other. And he said, faster than he could blink his eye, Michael had subdued Satan and had his sword at his throat. And instantly God spoke to Michael and said, "Release him. I'm not through with him yet." And Michael bowed his knee and let him go. And he just said God has been using him ever since then. But He made those angels. They took glory. They were cast out of heaven because of glory. If in God's mind then He decided to create you in heaven, and you're exactly like Him, and angels that weren't like Him took glory, how much glory would you take? You would take even more. And so the beginning point really can't be heaven for the bride, because we'll take too much glory, we'll be competing, and heaven will become hell again. And so what He does, I am made in His image, but I'm not Him. I begin my life then in my creation on the earth, a fallen earth and a fallen body. And the fallen world and fallen body is to make me safe to be a person in heaven. Do you know when we get to heaven and someone says to us, "We have glory, and why don't we rebel against God and take over?" All of us in this room are going to go, "No thanks. I'm like the Indian named Ben Dare Dundat, and me taking the glory really didn't work out very well, and I'm not doing that again." And so in God's priority, there is a purpose for life on the earth, for man, and we fight against it, and we're not told it, and therefore we wonder what's wrong with us. But one of the things that we have to do right away on the earth is to lose our glory. And glory is a problem for man. And glory messes up all of our lives. And if you think of the problems that we have, most of those problems are going to be rooted and sourced in some kind of glory.
Mike?
Yes?
When you say glory, what are you saying?
I'm saying that my image, that I have an image, and where I hold my image, I'm a threat to God. So my image can be that I'm intelligent. My image can be that I'm spiritual. My image can be that I'm successful. And where I hold that, people will continually control me. And I'll also protect it and fight to maintain it. And I'll use everything around me for my glory. Did I tell you about my 4-year-old son that reads like an 8-year-old? The doctors all think he's a genius. That's my glory. And so if you look at it this way, and not only do we need to lose it to get to heaven, we need to lose it now to have heaven on earth. Yeah. Because if you look at your life as a big rock and you're at peace right here, I can't move you with a bar because something's missing. And what's missing is a leverage point. And where you hold your glory is the leverage point that the whole world uses to move you. And so people walk around you all day long with a bar, and they're looking for the leverage point, which is where you hold your glory. And all they've got to do is tell you, find your point of image and disagree with it, and they'll budge you out of your peace. And so people move us all the time. And when another person's words or behavior can change my words or behavior, I'm not spirit-ruled, I'm other-ruled. And we hate being other-ruled. And it's a shocking thing to be other-ruled. But we are other-ruled, and we lose our peace because we're full of glory. Now, the whole gospel, and we mentioned before, can be summed up in Genesis 5:24. And it's 13 words in most translations, but it just says this. Enoch walked with God and was not, for God took him. That's the Christian life. You walk with God every day. And the Jesus you had yesterday doesn't help you today. Because he's the true manna that came down out of heaven. And if you got enough for 2 days, the second day it was worms. And so the Jesus I had yesterday doesn't help me today. Have you walked with him today? And we have people who come to you all the time and they go, I had so much victory the first year of my Christian life. Just Christ was my focus. Yes, but was he your focus when you got out of bed this morning? And we walk with God. Enoch walked with God. And the interesting thing was he didn't become somebody, he became a knot. Now, when you walk with him, you don't become somebody. That's another high sign when we go to a meeting and a Christian stands out above the others and they are someone. And they're not, because we walk with him, we become a knot. You remember Jesus going along and he's going into Jerusalem and he looks at all the olive trees and there's one that's all branched out that has leaves but no fruit. And he curses it for not having any fruit. Remember that? And then it says, but it's not the season for fruit. Well, what do you get cursed for not having fruit when it's not even the season for fruit? And the reason that it was cursed and it wasn't the season for fruit is that none of the trees should have been leafed out. But this one tree leafed out and stood out above all the others with no fruit. You know, if you're going to leaf out and stand out above everybody around you, why don't you have some fruit? Do you know he went straight to the temple and did the exact same thing? He went to the scribes and Pharisees and said, you're all leafed out above all the people in Israel, but I can't find any fruit in any of you. And he did the same thing to them. He cursed them. And so we get budged and we get moved where we hold our image and where we hold our glory, and we try to maintain that when we shouldn't even be maintaining it. He's our glory. If anyone boasts, we boast in the Lord. Enoch walked with God and he was not. He didn't become somebody. And one thing you can always do to a guest speaker, and I recommend you do it, is just walk up to him and say, I have Christ in me and Christ is in you. Am I your spiritual equal? And if there's a hesitation, take your notebook and close it in your Bible and get out of there. And I liked what they said in Africa to one of the pastors. They said, you have the most mature people of any church we've been in Africa. What's the secret? And he said, it's very simple. I hold a crown above their heads and they all grow into it. You know, our job in this room is to hold a crown above everyone else's head here because we're equal. We're spiritual equals. And to see you grow into it. And when we have the Christian pyramid and the caste system where someone stands on the top and you're not equal with them, there's a real problem there. And I really don't want to learn from that person. Paul makes it very clear that he's our slave. You know, that he's our servant. That he's there. Enoch walked with God and was not. And then you know what? God took him and he had all the assurance that he ever wanted. People are working to become somebody to get assurance with God, And here Enoch does nothing but walk with God, becomes a knot, and he has all the assurance that everybody else was working for. Isn't that nice? So that can be that becomes ours. We have to lose our glory, and he puts us in places where we actually lose it. The example I use is in 2 Kings, and you know the story when the prophet says, can we build a house? And Elisha says, yes, you can build one. And so he's chopping the wood with his axe, and the axe head falls into the water. And he's panicking because the prophets know that steel is the power of God and wood is humanity. And with steel, you can chop through the problems of man with the power of God. But if you lose your steel, you only have an axe handle that's made out of wood to beat on the world's problems, and all you do is make a drum. And he said, what do I do? And Elisha said, don't panic. Just point where you lost it, and he'll give it back to you. But you know what? You can't point to where you lose your power if you're full of glory. And so I fall out with Betty, and I get upset with her, and I lose all my power. I mean, there's nothing worse than having a fight with your wife and then go to a conference and talk about abiding in Christ. You know, there's nothing worse than that. There's that kind of pressure. The words just fall out of your mouth. And you know that you could regain that by a simple apology and humility as opposed to glory, and yet we don't do it. And if we would do it, he would give us back all of our power that we need. And so he's putting us in situations not to frustrate me, but to make me lose my glory. And here's the thing about that too that's very important. Once you lose your glory, you live your life out of the power of the Spirit. You don't live it out of the power of the flesh. Now, most of us in this room have had this experience, but I use the example of being in university and boxing and then working out in the same room with the wrestlers. And one day one of the wrestlers said to me, do you want to fight? And I said, of course. So I jumped in there, and the referee came over and said, take off your gloves, and you can't you can't hit anyone with your fist. Well, the wrestler beat me and beat me and beat me because I had to follow his rules. And so a few weeks later, I saw him again, and I said, do you want to fight? And he said, of course, because he'd already beat me. So I said, well, come over here. Well, when he came over here, they put gloves on his hands, and he couldn't grab me anymore. And I paid him back for everything he did to me. And I could have knocked him out, but I didn't. I just knocked him down and let him get up again, so I was enjoying knocking him down. Well, the thing is, there's two rings you can fight in. One is the ring of the flesh, and the other is the ring of the Spirit. And do you know people all the time try to pull you into the ring of the flesh, and you will never win in there because once you became a believer, he stripped you of your fleshly powers, and he's only giving you powers that work in the life of the Spirit. And they'll pull you over here to have a go at you, and you'll always lose. And you know you'll only go over there because of your glory? Because of some dig and some cut and something said about you and something they said about their family, your family, those kind of things, that'll cause you to go over there. And when you go over there, you don't have any tools, and they'll beat you. But if you lose your glory, you'll come to a place where if people want to fight, you pull them over into the life of the Spirit, and they don't know what to do there. And they honestly just don't know what to do. And I found that to be such a blessing, that one secret, just as a speaker, when people come up to me and say, well, I don't think you're very holy. And I'll say, you don't think I'm holy? Do you want to know what I was thinking last night in bed? I was trying to figure out how to kill the people in baggage claim. Because they broke into my bags and they stole some stuff. And I do counseling for some drug dealers. They owe me favors. I think I can get them killed. Well, the people just, and, so do you want to know what else I was dreaming about? And they go, And I said, well, you know, not being holy is the least of my worries. And really, if you own something, you can disown it. I can't give this to you by just setting it here and doing this and doing this and doing this. If I own it, I can disown it. And really, when someone says that you're stupid, look at Christ in your spirit and look back at yourself. And is that statement true? Yes. Yeah, and if you've lost your glory, here's what you'll say. You're wrong in saying I'm stupid. That is not true. I'm an idiot. Well, I don't think, I think you're very impulsive. You don't make good decisions. You look at him and you look at yourself and you go, the only good decision I made was believing in him. That was it. But people count on that, and it just rolls, and they really don't know what to do with you if you don't have glory. You don't have an image to protect. I was sharing with you last time that in Denver I was trying to get into this lane, and every time I tried to get in my car, this guy'd speed up. You've had it happen. You put on your blinker, they speed up. Put on your blinker, they speed up. Well, finally I had to get in. I just cut in front of him, no blinker, light turned red, hit the brakes. He came squealing up and bumped me. And he got out of the car. He was furious. And he had his fist up, and he was cursing me, and he's knocking on the window to tell me to open it. And I unrolled it, and here's all I said. I'm an idiot. I shouldn't even have a driver's license. I don't know why they let me drive. I said, you notice I'm all by myself. My wife isn't even with me. She won't even ride with me. She doesn't want to be with me. I said, a complete idiot on a hill. I said, I shouldn't even be out today, but I know God sent you because you're a real blessing to me. Anybody else would have shoved me into the traffic, I'd be dead, but you're on your toes. You're a blessing. You've been sent from God. And it was really funny to watch the guy because he's sitting there like this, and and then finally it was great because he goes, you go home now and you be careful. You be careful. And I said, okay, I'll go home and I'll be careful. But you know what? That could have been a big fight if you don't lose your glory. And what are you really fighting for when the cross really says to me and my crucifixion with him that I don't have anything to fight for? And real freedom comes from losing your glory. Now, in saying that, what has happened to you that made you lose your glory? And we see it as a tragedy. But you lose your glory, and now you're free. And it's amazing the freedom that comes when you lose your glory. You know, it's really nice when I can stop trying to tell everyone I'm a great success and just be honest and say that I'm a failure. And now I don't have to live up to your standard anymore because I've lost my glory. And there's 1,000 ways that he does it. But think about that. What has happened that God was doing to make you lose your glory? And another follow-up question is this. What are you doing today to protect your glory? What's happened in the last week that made you protect it? What did someone say or do that was against the image? Because I have an image of myself I want to believe, and I have one that I want you to believe. But again, where I hold that image, I won't be a free man. And I think Paul, you know, he sets himself free in so many places about statements about himself. Because he's being elevated. And he makes it very clear that he's sinned, that he's failed, that he's done this wrong and that wrong. He wasn't going to live to that anymore. Do you know there's a real way I can hold you in bondage? I can hold you in bondage by saying you're stupid, you're a failure, you're worthless, you're all those things. I hold you in bondage. But I also hold you in bondage if I say, do you know you're always so happy every time I see you, you're happy? Do you know I just handcuffed you to always be happy when you see me? Oh, you always have something so spiritual to say. You always have something God's been teaching you. It's just wonderful to listen to you talk. And I just handcuffed you to always have something to say about the Lord. And I'm making you live to me and live to your image and maintain it for what? There's no real freedom in it. In fact, you notice some people like Jim Baker, you know, when he fell and he wrote his book, you know, out of prison. And he just said, what a relief it is for me to just be in prison with no more expectations. And now I'm just going back to square one and walking with God. And it was really a neat thing, because I know this personally, but when he got out of prison, Billy Graham had sent a fellow there with a new car for him and a credit card with $20,000 on it and a little note from him that said, move on. Move on in the Lord. Just do it. But he's free. He talks about that in his book. He's just free now. He's not living to his glory. And so to what degree are we doing that, and do we see God in it? Because it's something I don't need, and it's not to frustrate me, it's to set me free. So I can love you, but I don't have to live to you anymore. The other thing is that we've had to lose our pride, and we don't want to lose pride. We mentioned this before, that you're going to hear 1,000 sermons on behavior in your life, and a couple on unbelief, and maybe one on pride. But it's not behavior that sends you to hell. Christ died for your sins. It's pride. And pride makes a person blind and deaf. One of the things we want to talk about in marriage is the three-legged stool of marriage, which is communication and intimacy and common goals. But in communication, the thing that will always throw that off is pride, because pride makes a person blind and deaf. And so one of the things we'll advocate, and Betty and I try to do it, is to have safe time together where she can tell me what she feels and I can say what I feel. But all the time there'll be a tension of one of us wanting to go into pride. And she'll have to stop me and say, remember, this was a safe time when I could tell you what I felt. Because you go into pride and it's over. Try to have a church meeting, people go into pride and it's over. Try to have a talk with your kids, they go into pride and it's all over. And God wants to cure me of my pride, and what do I really have to be proud of? I remember counseling a quadriplegic that came to my office, and I said, what do you think the problem is? And he said, well, I'm just full of pride. And I said, you're wetting yourself, you're in a wheelchair. I wasn't trying to be mean to him. I was trying to bring him down to reality. What are you so proud about? You know, even in that state, you find stuff to be proud about? And you know, his parting words to me after we'd spent some time together was this, out of Proverbs: a strong-willed man will have his neck broken. And he just said, I was just too strong-willed. I'm just full of pride. He said, I even got my pride in this wheelchair. And what has he done to break down pride so you'll listen? And not just listen to other people, but we don't listen to God if we have pride. And we're full of pride. We just won't listen to him. What situation is he putting me in that makes me lose that? The other thing, too, about behavior is this: you'll never get free from the thing you focus on. Now, you know, and we use the example, think of a pink elephant, and as soon as you get that locked into your mind, the first person to forget it, raise your hand. Well, you'll never forget it. And so the idea that preaching on sin and pointing out behavior to people will set them free from that behavior is not proven to be true. In fact, I mean, even with unbelievers, I have them in my office and I'll say to them, you know, I think really what's wrecking your marriage are these multiple affairs. And I've never had an unbeliever go, I never thought of that. That is really, you think that might be it? You think that might be the root of it? Yeah, I mean, they know that too. But in pride, they just go on in that and they don't listen. So what's he doing? And behavior, you know, you focus on that behavior, there won't be change. Focus on Christ and you'll see a big change in people. But here's a funny thing Indians will do, and you can test it yourself. But if I say, think of a pink elephant, and the first one to forget it, raise your hand, you'll never get it out of your head. But you cannot think of something and bat your eyes and keep thinking about it. It's impossible. So right now you think of the pink elephant. You got that in your head? Now think of the pink elephant and bat your eyes as fast as you can. You can't keep it up. You just can't do it. And so Indians are funny because you'll be talking and you'll see that they've gone off on something, or they're thinking something they shouldn't, or they're not listening to the lecture, or they've gone a certain place, and all of a sudden you look out there and you see somebody going. And then, you know, when they get done, they come back to the classroom and they're back with you. But actually, it's a very good thing to do, that what pride has us doing is having conversations with people that aren't in the room with us. You know, and we tell them this and they say this, but we come back with that and they say that, because when we're out of control, we fantasize, because fantasy gives you some level of control and some sick satisfaction of control. And it doesn't bring any of that. But anyway, the next time you're having a discussion with somebody who doesn't really exist and they're not even in the room, just bat your eyes like that. When you're done, start move on a different path toward Christ and move toward him. But what has God done in your life that has broke down your pride, and we see it as such a tragedy, and yet it was really the way? You know, some of you know Arthur, the old man that Ray and I run around with sometimes. And I was at his house, and Arthur's 100 now. I don't think it'll last much longer. But anyway, I said, Arthur, what do you think the purpose of life is? And he doesn't say much. He just turned around, walked up, and went up the stairs. And as he took each step, all he said was this: death, death, death. And then he opens the door and he goes to his bedroom and goes, more death. And he just closes the door. I'm at the bottom of the stairs, just lit death, death, death. There's more death. He's right, it is. It's death to my glory. It's death to my pride. It's death to my righteousness. It's death to my kingdom. But after he closed the door, I just said to the Lord, but it's life, 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 and more life. Because out of that death has come life. And so, yeah, it is death, but it is life. There's a lot of life in that. So we have to lose our pride. The other thing we have to lose is our strength. And my, what a hiccup that is, that we are trying to get stronger and stronger, and he's trying to make me weaker and weaker. Because power is perfected in weakness, not in strength. You don't fail at your point of weakness. You fail where you think that you're strong. And he put you in a place. A pastor in Melbourne the other day said, what do you think is wrong with this fellow that's coming to me? And I said, I know nothing about him. I'm just going to tell you this. He has a dominant mother. He has a passive father. He's a compulsive thinker. He's very intelligent. He's obsessive. And he's a control freak. And God has brought something into his life that he can't control now. And he said, that's right. That's him. That's exactly him. I said, yeah, that always happens to thinkers. They got everything in control, and then God brings something into their life they can't control. And then they hit the panic button, and they start falling to pieces. They can't control their husband. They can't control the kids. They can't control the job. It's something that goes out of control, and especially when it's something internal that we hate. We hate weakness, and yet God would like to see us free from all of our weakness. What's he done to reveal your weakness to you? And your weakness will make you safe. Man, I know if you start to get a hold of this and say, you know what, that situation in there is very dangerous for me because I have a tendency to live to man, I have a tendency to want glory, I have a tendency to want pride. It's a very dangerous place. Right there, you're willing to invite Christ to come and be for you what you can't be. And what has he done? What situations has he put you into? The other thing is losing your kingdom. Do you want to do that? And a lot of Christian parents have lost their kingdom through their kids. Betty and I had to laugh because we got married. We were Christians. We were going to do everything different. We were going to have this wonderful life together. It was going to be great. And I remember one night at 3 a.m, laying awake because one of the kids wasn't home yet. And I just turned to her and I said, love, do you realize we're outnumbered in here? There's 5 of us and only 2 of us are Christians. I said, we got outnumbered. It wasn't what I had planned at all. And God uses all that, but you do lose your kingdom. But we're like the Jews losing their pigs. They all went off the cliff, and they're all upset with Jesus. They want to kill him, but they shouldn't own pigs. And so we shouldn't own glory, righteousness, pride, and kingdoms and those kind of things. We shouldn't have them, and God's putting us in a place to get rid of them. And what we discover then is that maybe, just maybe, my life is going much better than I ever thought it was going to go. Because we say you stand in 2 systems, and in this system I have my man glasses, and my goal is to act like Jesus, perform, be pleasing to God through more obedience, and I'll be more acceptable in doing all of that. Or I can move over into this system where I put on my Jesus glasses, and my whole goal is to decrease that he might increase. And that I need to lose my glory and pride and righteousness and strength and all those things. And if I'm standing in the right system, my life is going great. If I'm standing in this system over here, it's wiped out. I mean, there's hardly anywhere else to go. And so what system do you stand in? You stand in the right one. I mean, God didn't make the world to make all of us miserable. He made the world to accomplish something in me, to make me safe. And I stand in this system, and all of a sudden, everything I thought was taking me out is bringing me in. And my life is much better than I thought it was. And it's painful to lose these things, but it's more painful to spend your whole life trying to hold on to them. And once you lose those, you're really grateful about them.